Mm. Super excited to be with you all today during this lunch and learn. I have my water with me. If you don't have your water or a cup of tea or maybe a cup of that last morning coffee, go ahead and grab one. I also encourage you to get your journal and a pen because we're going to be creating our own emotional regulation plans today, ladies. I'm just going to wait maybe 30 more seconds. And of course, as soon as I was getting on to record today, the train goes by. And so you might be hearing a little rumbling in the background. I'm not at my home studio. I'm actually on location in upstate New York. And so just kind of getting my bearings on where I am. You're in the right place if you're here to talk about and create your own emotional regulation plan. All right. And we'll go ahead and get started. I'm so glad to see some of you are popping on. I can open up the chat room if you want to say who you are and where you're from. There's also a place on the bottom if you're not listening to this in recording, but if you're live, where you can raise your hand or ask a question. And you can also just put it in the chat. That's probably the easiest way for me to keep track of it, is just put it in the chat. All right, I'm going to do my share screen. So we get you all the goodie information for today. Beautiful. Presentation mode. Perfect. Wonderful. Hi and welcome. I'm so glad you're here. Let's all just take a deep breath together. Kind of ground ourselves and center ourselves. Maybe you've had a busy week this week, and we're wrapping up the week and you're finally being able to drop into your body a little bit. It feels good to give yourself this time. Maybe close out any other windows that you have going on, get rid of some distractions that you might have going on, and just fully dive into this really important webinar that you said yes to. I'm so glad to have you here. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. And as you'll find moving forward, I'm going to be doing webinars once a month and all kinds of juicy topics for you as we move through the rest of this year and into next year. In November, we're going to be talking about deepening connections. In December, we're going to be talking about New Year's resolutions. And in January, we're just going to be doing a self-compassion check-in. And I'm going to be unveiling my brand new model around wholeness model. And then in February, we're going to be doing your sexual wholeness and be doing some work around that and where you're at with that. And then in March, we're going to be doing an erotic massage night. How does that sound? So super juicy stuff. Right now, the webinars are free and open to you and available. And I invite you to join my newsletter list at www.hotpinkyou.com in order to get up to date on what's happening with webinars and other things that are coming up soon. So stoked to have you here today. As I move into my presentation, I'm going to have to move away from kind of monitoring anything going on in the chat or raising your hand or questions. So I just want to welcome you. Grab your pen and paper. We're going to meet for about 45 minutes, and you're going to be developing your own emotional regulation plans today. I'm super excited for this. And let's dive in. You're in the right place if you sometimes find yourself feeling this emotional drain, some of the times, or even a lot of the time. Generally speaking, emotional regulation plans really help support you to feel emotionally stable and emotionally predictable in many ways. And I want you to see emotional regulation plans, ladies, as not trying to manage our emotions or make it more comfortable for other people to for us to have emotions. That's not what emotional regulation plans are. We're women. We have emotions, and that is a-okay. And so I'm going to permission you have all the emotions, have the intensity of the emotions. Don't try to damp yourself or tamp yourself down so that somebody else is more comfortable. But what emotional regulation plans really are is their communication strategy that will really help you in conversations around what you're feeling and why you're feeling different ways. So that's why I'm super excited about them. Emotional regulation plans are here for you if you want to feel more heard and even validated. And validation is the number one key to communication. There's 4 or 5 major parts of communication: empathy, curiosity, deep listening, right? And validation is another one of those. It's huge on my list. If you want to be a good communicator and you want to receive good communication, validation is key in that. And when we can stay in our emotional regulation plans, I can guarantee you can ask for validation on what you're feeling with those that you're in deep connection with. You're in the right place if your emotions or you find that your reactions get in the way of being effective in your communication. Are you slamming down the phone? Click, I'm done. I'm not talking anymore. If you saw my Blog Talk radio program a couple of weeks ago, I worked with the phrase "I'm done." And so go back and listen to that, because there's lots of juicy little nuggets in there around what you're really conveying when you say "I'm done," what you're really wanting, what you're really needing when you say "I'm done." And so sometimes we don't communicate the most effectively with our loved ones, and the emotional regulation plans are a way to do that. And you're in the right place if you tend to explode or have outbursts or cry or scream or yell, and you know that this is just not working for you. Not that there's anything wrong with having like a spaz attack. I do that every once in a while. And the people that really love me, that are in my life, know that for the most part, I'm a really good communicator until I break down. And so emotional regulation plans are here for you to monitor yourself a little bit better and know what you need to be asking for earlier on so that you don't get all the way to the outburst phase. We'll be talking a little bit about that, right? And you're in the right place if you desire to get a better handle on your boundaries. Some of you listening to this might not even know what your boundaries are. Emotional regulation plans help you figure out what your boundaries are and communicate them way more effectively. I've worked with hundreds of women on these, and men on these regulation plans, and they're super powerful. I'll tell you a little bit about where they came from, like the root of where I got them from, the foundational pieces. And this is very near and dear to my heart, because I'm all about living way more authentically in my relationships. And you are in the right place if you want greater intimacy and connections with those people that you love. If you want to center yourself and be more present and fully alive in your relationships, this is a great tool to get you to that place. All right. I want to share a little bit about my story. Why are emotional regulation plans even on my radar? Why am I even practicing them? And why am I sharing them? You know, what's important about them? And I had this incredible defining moment around this concept. I've had lots of defining moments around like emotional and emotional regulation plans, but around this concept. I had a woman that I was working with several years ago, and we had just been doing a full-on, very intense retreat for like a week. And we kind of, it was a new collaboration, new relationship, and we were kind of getting all over into each other's stuff. And there had been some incredibly profound miscommunications throughout the week that even left me sitting there going, I don't know if I want to continue this collaboration. I know I want the work, but I don't know if I can continue this collaboration. And what was interesting is in the debrief moment of having a breakfast with this woman, she said the most profound thing to me, and I just so appreciate her for this. I know when things are going well for you, Christy, like I can feel it. You exude like confidence, and you're very grounded, and it's just a pleasure. And I definitely know when things are not going well, when everything's kind of hitting the fan for you, when you've hit your wall. What I'd love to know, and what I'm struggling to see, is your yellow. And that at first I was bristled, like I kind of like, how dare you, right? How dare you? And I wanted to point out all the ways that she had been so difficult over the last week. I wanted to defend myself and reflect back to her all the things that she should be looking in the mirror around. But I knew a deep pit in my stomach that she was right, and that this had been feedback that I had been given for many years, for most of my life. In some ways, sometimes I was called a hothead growing up. I definitely had a temper tantrum here and there, and I would implode and explode. And then I also had this like incredible groundedness. People that know me say, you are so grounded. And I agree, like I am so grounded. I'm a super grounded person until I'm not. And what I needed to really define for myself, and what this woman was really pointing out for me, was truth, real talk. I needed to know my yellow. And sometimes even, she was saying to me, I don't know your yellow. And what I reflected back to myself is, I don't think I do either. I don't think I know when I'm hitting my limit. I put on the face, I make everything look okay, and then it implodes. Everything blows up. I feel it in my body. I feel it in my psyche. And I then went on a quest over the next several years of, how can I know my yellow, and how can I convey that out to somebody else? And some of you may know me, have been on webinars before, have followed me for a while. Hot Pink University has been around since 2011. I've been around as a psychotherapist for way longer than that, since 2005. But this is what I do. I'm an author of Ignite Your Life with my co-author, Anne Zoe Murgatroyd. I am a solo author of the Wisdom Cards for Women. It's a deck of 50 beautiful cards that I created for my 50th birthday last year. And I also do a lot of course development. In addition to being an author, a speaker, a psychotherapist, I also do a blog talk radio program on Blog Talk Radio, and it's Blog Talk Radio Hot Pink U, and it's filled with life class programs for women. And I'm a recent graduate of a brand new endeavor in my life to become a sex educator and relationship coach by graduating through the Somatica Institute in California and doing some ongoing advanced studies with them, which I'm super excited about. I'm a course creator. I have the Emotionally Literate Woman, which is a great course to take. It's a self-done on your own time course that you can take on my Kajabi platform. And I want to take information that I practice with other people in psychotherapy and distill it down to the masses. And so that's kind of where the Emotional Literate Woman comes in, and also where this webinar comes in around emotional regulation plans. I'm a woman in my midlife. I'm an empty nester. I have 2 adult children who are fully functioning on their own. And so I have a lot of time now, and it feels gracious and good. But I'm still a mom, and I love being a mom. And I also am in what I would call the sandwich years. And so some of you in your midlife years can relate to this, where you have adult children that don't really need help, but do still are your kids and sometimes need help, right? And then you have your parents who are entering into their older years and they're needing a little bit of extra help. And so you feel like a sandwich sometimes in the middle of these two entities being tugged and pulled. I can relate. And so this is why we need emotional regulation plans, so that we really take incredibly good care of ourselves. And I'm here to support women to reignite to their passions, their purpose, their pleasure, and their play. I love the P words. And that's really my passion and my purpose in life, is to help support other women to live life filled with whatever they're passionate about. My big words in life that I love are connection, which leads to greater intimacy, and passion. That's a huge word for me. I love that word. And freedom. Freedom is a very big value for me, that in any partnership or relationship I'm in or collaboration I'm in, I need freedom. It's super important. I want you to think about what your words are. I think words are super important. I'm the kind of woman that feels like you can have your cake and eat it too. On that previous slide, you saw me holding up the cake, and I think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think you can have it all. So where is the root of emotional regulation? So I was a school mental health consultant for 3 years for the state, and in my state that I lived in. And I found this concept of zones of regulation used for little to middle school kids, sometimes high school kids. But it was kind of like giving kids the stoplight of green, yellow, and red. And I really liked the concept, and it made sense for kids. Like, green, you can go; yellow, slow; red, stop, right? And I started incorporating some of the teachings that I had learned by observing teachers in the classroom with my adult women, with myself. When I was asked to find my yellow in order to continue being in collaboration relationship with this woman, it was an important skill for me to develop. And so emotional regulation plans for kids could also be amped up for women. And that's kind of where the birth of the emotional regulation planning really came from. And so I ask you this: do you know you're yellow? Do you know when you're starting to get agitated and hitting your limit? Do you know when it's time to like stop and do something different? And so this is how we're going to dive in a little deeper. I want to share with you first, before we dive into the actual emotional regulation plans, I want to share with you this model that I learned in the early 2000s. I was doing some work around helping support people to stay out of crises. And it was some work around nonviolent crisis communication stuff. And that's when I first learned about this bell-shaped curve around the stress model of a crisis. And the important piece to know today is that we all have different baselines. I created another baseline that's a little higher up. Some people run off their baseline being the green zone, right? The calm zone. Some people can get all the way down to super chill, super calm. Others of us might ride our baseline a little higher, right? So it might be here for some, here for others, here for others. That's important to know where your baseline rides. And it might ride higher for different reasons. You might have a very high stress life. You might be in the middle of the sandwich years and kind of in a crisis of some kind. You might be in an unsatisfactory relationship or marriage right now that might be creeping your baseline up. You might have previous trauma or current trauma that you're dealing with that creeps your baseline up. So I want you to be thinking about, as we move forward, where is my baseline? Do I ride a little higher than other people? Or am I pretty average, and down low where I can really be chill. This baseline can change over the course of time based on what stress you're currently dealing with in your life or have dealt with in your past trauma, how you were raised, even genetic, back, grandma to grandma, right? Could have you have an elevated baseline. And it's important to know, because what that means is if you're a little elevated or you're riding a little high this week or this year, you're that much closer to a full-blown blowout, right? And so that's important to know. Where is my baseline? How close am I to a full-blown blowout, right? Where we're going to focus our attention on today is this part of the bell-shaped curve, which is growing agitation, or your yellow. That's where we're going to focus most of our attention today. When I coach individually with women, we do the whole gamut, the whole bell curve. For today's purpose and for what we have time for, this is where we're going to focus. This is the sweet spot. I want you to look at that bell curve, and at any point in that area of growing agitation in our yellow, there is a wide, vast array of things that can be done to bring you back down to baseline. I want you to imagine that there's an arrow that all of a sudden is starting to go up and up and then comes back down to baseline. There are things that can engage us and intervene instead of going to the full top level stress or blowout. There are things that can engage us and bring us back down to baseline. And there are things that can further enrage us and make us blow our top. And that's important to know. That's what we're going to be developing today, right? And so this stress model of a crisis, if we don't engage ourselves at some point and intervene in our yellow, we hit the top of our stress level and we blow up. This is the red zone, the blowout zone, where the jig is up. We start slamming things around. You'll see somebody shut down even. You might see somebody kind of flee and like leave immediately. So this is the blowout zone where we fight, if we can fight the threat off. And that's done by words, physical things like slamming things, throwing things down, throwing things, hitting, right? These are the blowout times in our lives. So the fight, the flight, which is pack your bags and leave, say I'm done, I'm getting out of this relationship, right? The freeze, which is shut down, withdraw, do nothing. And so some people like kind of fold into themselves. There's three other ones that I want you to consider that I don't think people often talk about, which is collapse. We can get to the top of the stress model of a crisis and just bang, collapse into ourselves. All communication is shut down. We've reached an absolute max limit of like what resources we have, and we're just done. And that's a possible scenario that can happen. And there's also dissociative natures. We all dissociate to some degree, meaning if I'm going to get in the car right now and go to the store, and I'm in the town that I'm used to, I know exactly the route I'm going to take. I can be on autopilot in my head and I don't even have to think about it. But when we reach the stress level of the outburst phase where we're dissociating, like big time dissociation, this is like a complete out of body experience. We no longer have faculties to communicate. We might look like we're frozen. We're just kind of numbing life out. We're just not a part of our life in this moment in time anymore. And it takes a long time to come back into our bodies. It's often a trauma response, a severe trauma response. And then another one that is not talked about, we all know fight, flight, or freeze, but the other one that's not often talked about is appease. which is I'm smiling and I'm dying inside. I have this a little bit too. So I'm usually like fight or flee or appease. Those are like my go-to things. Sometimes I get to a place where I'm like collapse, but most often I run in those three places, and I'm an outburst. So you actually don't even look like you're an outburst. You don't even look like you're completely stressed and melted down to the blowout zone because you're smiling. And meanwhile, you're dying inside, you're not getting the needs met, and you feel like imploding on this person, right? So that's the stress model of the crises. And the other zone that we don't talk about, so when we're in the blowout zone, there's very few interventions. By the time you get to your red zone as a woman, there's only a couple interventions. I'll share them with you when we get to talking about the red zone. We have run out of coping skills. We've run out of strategies. And usually there's just 2 or 3 interventions that are left. Remember, I talked about that growing agitation zone. There's a ton of interventions. There's a ton of things that can bring you back down to baseline. Once you're in the blowout, not much. You run out of options. So trying to catch yourself earlier in the stress model is key. All right. And then the aftermath that we don't talk about and we don't debrief around. This is the breakfast that I was having with this woman where she was like, I don't know, you're yellow. You're left feeling sometimes shame, guilt, or remorse. You're left feeling pretty emotionally depleted. Sometimes this leads to depression and anxiety. And sometimes if you're big into the blowout, it leads to remorse over relationships and regrets over what we said. And it's hard. It's like, think about your words as like a tube of toothpaste where you squish it out and now try to take that toothpaste and put it back in the tube. It's not happening. What's out is out, and very little is going to be able to be put back in. And so when we gush in how we treat people that we love deeply in our lives, because we've reached our limit and our capacity, we have deep regret in the aftermath, maybe, of things that we've said. I know that's true for me in my life. There's times where I've imploded on my mother. There's times where I've imploded on my partner in life, on my kids, and there's deep regret in the things that are said. And so this aftermath has a vulnerability to it that's super important. We often ignore that. We often push the crises down and we don't debrief. We can journal, we can talk to somebody, we can go to therapy in this aftermath. There's a lot of valuable places and spaces that we can get to higher levels of learning. And you just being here today to learn your own emotional regulation plan, you're actually in this kind of aftermath because you have pieces and places where you've maybe exploded in the past that you can bring forward today and really debrief and self-reflect. You're giving yourself this investment of time, which is your most valuable commodity, let's face it. And you're saying, I'm worth it to not have this be happening anymore, right? So kudos to you for doing that. We're going to dive now into the emotional regulation plans, the meat of why you're here today. And it's a tool that I want you to think about as a tool to know yourself better. It's a communication tool, and it's definitely a self-monitoring tool, meaning I can self-monitor. I know my yellow now. I've developed mine over the course of time. I definitely know my yellow. And it's no longer a mystery to me why I'm blowing up, because I know my yellow, and I'm much more successful at getting myself back down to baseline because I know my yellow now in lots of situations. So I want to make sure you grab your journal and your pen now and get ready to dive in deep and create your own emotional regulation plan. Super exciting. So like I said, today we're going to mostly focus on yellow, but there's all kinds of things in the green area and the red area that we can focus on with this. But today's emphasis is on that yellow zone because it's so important And most women don't know they're yellow. When it was pointed and reflected to me, and I started working with other women on it, and I started asking the question, do you know you're yellow? Most of the women I worked with, even incredibly intelligent women, were like, no, I know when I've reached my limit, but I don't know my yellow, right? Let's take a breath. The green feelings, right? I want you to think about, and you can journal a little bit around, how do you know your body is in the green zone? Where are your shoulders sitting when you're in green? How does your face get held when you're in green? How does your pit of your stomach feel? How do your arms and your legs feel when you're in your green? For me, I have a sense of peace and calm. Those are the emotions or the feelings that I associate with green. I feel appreciated and loved often when I'm in green, and a sense of happiness, joy, and even excitement. Excitement is a great green feeling. The things and experiences that put me in green or keep me in green is definitely space and time for myself. Definitely space and time for myself. Journaling is also, you'll see me looking down because I have my emotional regulation plan that's in my journal in front of me. There's a slower pace about life. It's not moving from one thing to the next, but having some integration time in between spaces and places. And I take care of me better. When I cook, I'm in green. Cooking for myself or baking definitely keeps me in green. But also when somebody's taking care of me, I love somebody to cook dinner for me or bring me coffee, in the morning, or check on me, like a friend calling or texting saying, hey, I haven't heard from you for a while. Like that feels really good, right? Those things and experiences keep me in green. And the needs and wants that I have in the green zone is definitely like physical touch, massage, hugs. But also, there was some things that I was thinking about the other day when I was kind of putting this slide packet together. Really good to great communication. Remember when I was talking about empathy, curiosity, validation? When people are really communicating good, like even if they're disappointed in me or they're upset about something, but they're doing it in a way that is really great communication and non-judgmental and non-provoking or intimidating, like that just warms me up and I feel in green. I can stay in green in a really difficult conversation and never move to yellow if the person in front of me is a good to great communicator. And that's, I think, really key and important for me. I have a lot of internal resources that keep me in green, my sense of humor, my sense of peace and calm, like I'm able to like feel that in my body pretty easily. My sense of presence, presence and just being present in the moment really keeps me in green, and that feels good. Those are my internal resources. My external resources are friends and family and my dog and my Jeep. I'm going to go take the top off the Jeep today and be in my green zone all the rest of today while I take a wine tour on the Finger Lakes of New York today on my own. And so being on my own, being the introvert I am, I can sustain green pretty good on my own. When I'm in relationship with other people, again, it's that good to great communicator that I can really stay in the green zone with. But that's my green. So I want you to be thinking of that for yourself. How do you know you're in your green? Instead of moving to yellow, I want to move to red, which we're not going to keep a great amount of time focusing on. But I want to move to red to kind of talk a little bit about the dichotomy or the juxtaposition of the green to red, right? The feelings in red are enraged, completely frustrated, angry, but also for me, and check in with yourself, Feelings of shame. Feelings of shame or guilt sometimes can move me up into the red. Being called out on something versus being called in can sometimes make me feel in the red. And embarrassment. I noticed that a short while ago. Embarrassment was a big feeling that I could feel in my body. My chest feels heavy. I get really like tunnel vision focused. My body just feels incredibly tensed, and that's what the red zone is. Things that trigger me into the red is criticism for sure. Constructive feedback that I didn't ask for. Unsolicited advice can shoot me in the red like nothing else. Too much activity, too much people time, too much being in connection with people, not enough downtime. Those things can put me in red. I want you to think about when the last 5 times that you had a major blowout, what were the triggers that put you in the red zone? Sometimes for the people that love us in life, we have triggers that they're not even aware of. They didn't create and they didn't cause, but they definitely stepped on them. They're like landmines that they stepped on. And I think that's important to acknowledge that our loved ones maybe don't necessarily intend to step on our triggers, but when they do, it's important that we point it out, but we take care of those triggers. Like if it's a landmine that was placed there as a 3 to 5-year-old child, by my interactions with my father, that's for me to like unpack and take care of for my loved ones. Once they know it's a trigger, it's their responsibility to try not to purposefully step on it. And in truly loving relationships, they don't purposefully step on your triggers. Okay. I think that's important. Interventions on, unmet needs are like not being heard, not being validated, spinning a story about me without really checking with me. Like that's, a trigger. And remember how I said that interventions, once we get up that to the top of the stress model, we run out of potential interventions. The only interventions that work for me once I'm in red is time and space. I don't want to be touched. I don't even want to be talked to. So be thinking about what interventions bring you down. Some people want to be touched. Some people want to be talked to. Some people want to be held. Know yourself and know your body so that you can communicate to somebody. I'm in my red zone right now. And remember, I don't like to be touched. I actually need space. I need about 20 minutes, right, to come back down to my baseline. I don't want to say anything I regret. I don't want to be the tube of toothpaste right now. And that's where this can become a communication tool for somebody else. We can actually say to people, I'm in my red zone. This is what I need right now. So let's develop the yellow zone a little bit. I'm going to take you through, do a time check. Yeah, we're doing good. I want to take you through, I want you to close your eyes and get in a comfortable position. And I want you to imagine the last time you felt agitated or edgy. Maybe it was in traffic. Maybe it was a miscommunication with the woman checking you out at the cash register or the waiter taking your order. Or maybe it was something even closer and dear to your heart, a misunderstanding with your daughter or your son, an unmet need where you were hoping that friend would reach out to you and call you. Maybe it was a disappointment. Disappointment is really, really hard in life. It's really, really hard. It puts me in yellow almost immediately when I feel disappointed. When I feel disappointed by somebody, or when I have disappointed somebody, I've canceled plans on them. I didn't communicate as productively as I could have. I didn't show up in my best self. Or maybe the traffic. Or last week when you just tossed and turned and didn't get enough sleep. Think back to that moment in time where you felt in your yellow zone. And I want you to imagine yourself being there in that moment right now and just doing a body scan from the top of your head all the way down to the tip of your toes. I want you to feel where you felt in your body you're yellow. Growing agitation, growing frustration, anxiousness, nervousness, guilty, a yucky feeling, just a yucky feeling in your body. And check in with that. And when you're ready, you're going to leave this image and come back to the here and now, slowly opening your eyes and being present with us all. How and where in your body did you feel your yellow? For me, it's in my shoulders, in my forehead, in my jaw. I clench my teeth. It's in my throat, gets tight. I almost feel like I'm going to tear up. I can hardly speak, right? Feel it in my gut. So I want you to write down in your journal, where in your body do you feel that? I also want you to write down in your journal, what feelings alert you? And feelings are one word, not thoughts. Thoughts are sentences. Feelings are one word. I cover this in my emotional literacy class for women. The difference between emotions and mood states and feelings. Feelings are one word. And what feelings? For me, growing embarrassment, growing frustration. I shared with you in the visualization, disappointment is a huge one I've been working on all this year. I'm 51 tomorrow, and I'm still working on hating disappointing other people, right? What feelings do you associate with being in yellow? What unmet needs or things might trigger you? I talked to you about poor communication or criticism, not being checked on or considered. Too much activity or action can often put me in yellow. Changing plans on me, like not as much anymore, but over the years, I've kind of like worked my way through that. But changing plans, like if we say we're going to go on a walk, let's go on a walk, right? Clutter, physical clutter in my environment puts me in yellow. Disorganization or feeling disorganized, being a part of disorganization puts me on edge and in yellow. I don't like that feeling. So be thinking about what are some of the triggers that put you in yellow. Over the next 2 weeks, start developing this more and noticing, ooh, that's going to go in my yellow zone. That was something that I didn't know about myself, right? The key that I want to talk about is there's a lot of interventions in yellow that could work. As I reflected and continued my collaboration with this woman, there was a couple asks that I had for our collaboration. One was I needed a really quiet sleeping environment. What I noticed that put me more in the agitation was I wasn't getting enough sleep or downtime or alone time. I was rooming with somebody else during the retreat, and I really needed more privacy. And if I didn't have privacy, I was always going to be feeling in yellow. So in future retreats, as I did more collaboration, having my own space or space I could go to, having downtime, taking good care of myself throughout the week, and having time where I unplugged from everybody and just like maybe sat by a fire. This was super important. The other was having really clear definitions of like roles. So taking that disorganization out and putting in more organization was super important for me to get out of that yellow place, right? And so that's very specific to this situation. And where I'm at with other relationships is going to be different. So my yellow with my son and my daughter, each of them are going to have different places and spaces of what I need and want to keep me out of my yellow, right? I like when text messages get returned in a timely fashion. When they don't, I'm kind of triggered. I'm in my yellow. It agitates me. The places and spaces where I'm in my yellow with my mom is going to be very different versus where I'm with my partner when I'm in partnership, and how we communicate. It's going to be really different. So each person, you have to communicate your yellow and what your needs are and what your boundaries are. Being in yellow is often an indicator that a boundary of some kind has been crossed for you. And so it can be a signal light that, if ignored, turns to red. If you don't ignore it and you feel that pit in your stomach and you know it's a boundary, assertively communicating, hey, this is a boundary for me. I actually don't want you coming in my room after 8 o'clock at night. It disrupts me, right? So a very specific request of the person. Interventions that work for me is moving my body. Emily Nagoski talks about this in her book, Burnout, that she wrote with her sister. And we can take the stressor away, but if we don't move our body, we actually aren't depleting or metabolizing the stress-oriented chemicals. And so moving my body is an intervention that works. Talking, having good communication, asking for what I want, and actually receiving what I want, and being open to receiving what I want. These are all interventions that work. Over the next month, I want you to develop your interventions of what works for you and start noticing the things that work and the things that don't work. Super important. Why knowing your yellow is important? Deeper connections with those you love. Trust me, it deepens your connection. When I can say to my partner, whew, I have not had downtime since the beginning of September. I'm really needing to stay home while you go to Tampa this week so that I have 3 nights just to myself. It's way more connected than exploding and saying, I never get time alone. Why don't I ever get just the house to myself? Right? We've all been there. But knowing our yellow, we can set a boundary, ask for what we want, ask for what we need, and get our needs met, which deepens our connections with other people. And there's a way to do it. Knowing yourself and your needs, what you want, what you desire, and then actually voicing them, right? That's why knowing our yellow is super important. Having healthy expressions of what we feel and why we feel certain things, you're actually going to feel better about yourself. The blowouts and that remorse that I shared with you on that one slide, that's a true thing. And when we can communicate in our best possible way with people, it is so much more powerful. As we're wrapping up our time together, I just want to say a big thank you for joining me today. I hope that you got something beautiful out of this time. I know whenever I talk about emotional regulation plans with the women I coach, there's always aha moments in that. And there's so many ways that you can stay connected to me. I still have my wisdom cards on my site. I am still doing my emotionally literate women course, and that's super affordable to purchase. My free 5-day pleasure challenge is also incredibly valuable and important. And you're welcome to jump in. That is free. Follow me on my Blog Talk Radio. I want more followers. And so I'm asking, please follow me on my Blog Talk Radio program. Always a new episode every single week. And starting this November, I'm launching my women's talking circles about sex, intimacy, and relationships. You can join one every once in a while, or you can join an annual membership and be a part of my women's talking circles for a full year. Whatever you decide to do, stay in touch with me. Hop on my newsletter at www.hotpinkyou.com. And I'm always here to connect in a free 30-minute Ignite Your Life phone call, I call them, and sort through and talk a little bit. I have a couple openings in my private coaching. I'm pretty full right now, but I have a couple openings for individuals and couples. And I just love working one-on-one with women and taking them through my step-by-step process of how you can really be an embodied woman and ignite your life. I'm Christy Bemis, and I just want to thank you for joining me today. So beautiful. I'm going to do a stop share now and join you in the whole classroom. Oh yeah, we have somebody from Chicago. Erotic massage. Yes, yes. Awesome. So stay tuned. There's lots more webinars coming up. I always want to stay in connection with you and give you the best possible resources that you possibly can. Feel free to email me at hotpinkyou@gmail.com and let me know how you liked the webinar and what you got out of it. Thank you so much. Be beautiful and take good care of yourself.